All right, first things first, gentlemen. How are you?
We're all right.
Yeah.
We're keeping busy.
Yeah, it's crazy times, I suppose. Is it a lot of creativity that keeps you busy, or other stuff?
Uh, uh, well, we've got a radio show we do, and I've been doing loads of remixes and stuff.
Okay.
John's just been reading loads of books.
Yeah, that's pretty much the top and bottom of my lockdown.
Do you have any tips for me? I'm trying to read more these days as well.
But there's a lot of Andrew Taylor books, which are brilliant. It's
Okay.
like sort of set in Cromwell's time, but they're brilliant, really good.
Okay. Well, I'll Google that. I'll have a look. But luckily, you have a new album finished, so there are some good things to talk about. So before we get into the record, I kind of want to start with last year, because last year was kind of a 10-year anniversary for you guys. And was it a time for reflection on the past 10 years as well?
More of a celebration, really.
Okay.
It was just, I mean, in actual fact, it's actually longer than
Mhm.
when we met, 'cause it was probably something like 2007 when we first
Okay.
actually met. So it was a few years. But from when the day, when the first album
It was
came out,
released, yeah.
that's when we
Sure.
took it from. And I just noticed, oh look, that's 10 years since that album came out. Why don't we?
Yeah.
And also, it's just a way to spin products out so you can do tours and stuff like that. Gimmicks, really. But
Mm.
it was actually, I didn't realize what a success it would be. It was really, really good. The album was
Yeah,
taken really well.
there wasn't much time for reflection because we're just touring constantly. And it was fantastic, especially over in Holland. I mean, we love coming over to Holland. It's
Okay.
it's a great country, great people. So we were due to be over there last week, I think. We had it all planned. We're over there for 2 weeks and absolutely gutted that we couldn't get over. But hey, it is life, and we will be back over, and
Right.
we'll smash it twice as hard.
Because I can imagine living the life that you do with being on the road a lot and playing everywhere, and now all of a sudden that kind of is cut out. Does it make it weird to be at home as much as you are in a way?
Yes and no. I think I was talking about this yesterday. Certain members of the band, I think they were really struggling. Like John, his voice is an instrument.
Right.
I think it's a musician thing. Just sitting playing your guitar at home doesn't cut it. There's
Mhm.
something about it. It's not an ego thing. I think it's just letting something out when you're on a stage that does something for you.
Yeah, it's that like sort of, I can sing in the house or I can sing in the studio, but
Mm.
singing live, it's that extra 30% that you get from somewhere else, mainly the crowd.
Mm.
Um, that gives you that sort of adrenaline rush as well. And when you're not getting that, on a regular basis, you could get down. But I think because we've toured so heavy over the last, say, 5 years, it's
Mm.
been lovely in a way that I've spent time with my daughters because, they're sort of reaching teenage years now.
Right.
And I've missed quite a lot of it because obviously my job takes us away from home. And it's been quite lovely just chilling out with my girls, So
Right.
in that way, it's been quite a lovely thing.
I
You know?
mean, for me, it's quite similar. I self-isolate anyway. I'm in the studio all the time,
Mm.
remixing and tweaking and whatever. And but it has been quite nice to not go on the road because it not that I was getting sick of it, far from it, but it's just, oh God, I've got to go out again, 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 and it gets a bit repetitive.
And sort of the geography where we live as well, nothing's easy. We could
Right.
all move to London and everything would have been, a breeze. But because we love the Northeast and because we love living where we live, I think Holland's the easiest place forward to get to. We can get to Holland quicker than we can London.
Takes a full
Right.
day. Yeah.
Oh, fair enough.
But it's, it is what it is. But we love where we live. So it's, and if you listen to our music, a lot of it's based around, like the sort of the struggle in the Northeast and how we appreciate where we live.
Right. There's one song, Elgin Towers, that kind of I googled a bunch of the names in there. So we'll talk about that in a bit. But talking about kind of this touring is it ain't working, and this might be just my projection on it. But is that kind of about that touring life?
Yes, yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. And it's always that kind of, you know, like, I was a carpenter, you know, like for 15 years, and then I was a lecturer about carpentry and joinery. So I've worked since I was sort of 16, full-time job, and then only now, in the last sort of 5 years, have I been a full-time musician. Okay. Now, what I realise is people say, oh, well, you're only on stage for an hour, or, you know, you're only on stage for an hour and a half. It ain't working, you know what I mean? It's harder than any other job that I've done. And I was working on building sites 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. And it pales in insignificance to the sort of mind stress that you have. And you're working 24 hours a day on your phone, constantly speaking to people, constantly doing interviews, constantly. So there is no let up to this kind of work where, you know, you put your tools away and you're finished, you know, your day's work. And I'm not complaining, because it is what I've always wanted to do, and I love what I'm doing. But the lyrics are sort of representing that, you know. And Smoove and Turrell's been an underground band for, say, I don't know, 10 years. It's the heads that really, really know it. And obviously the huge fan base that we've got. But, you know, we've been missed out a lot of the time from major radio stations, or because we haven't got the monetary clout to put behind it. And I think that's what the song's about as well. That sort of, you know, like, when's it going to happen? What, you know, when are we going to be taken for what we really are? Which is, you know, in my mind,
when are we going to be rich?
No, it's not even about that. I'm not interested in that. It's about when we're going to be sort of appreciated for what we are.
Because this is something I always enjoy talking about with musicians, because I have a feeling that from the outside it looks, like you say, it looks like an easy job, but then the most musicians I talk to, they're exhausted and they're just having to work so hard. So what are some of the, in your eyes, misconceptions about living a life in a band or making music?
I think the first thing, and I try not to get annoyed by it, but it always aggravates me, is when you put a tour up. Like, you've got a poster, you put it up, you say, here's our tour. And then straight away, loads of people go, why are you not coming to here? Why are you not? And you're like, you look at the map and you go, that's only 20 minutes away from where you live. What's the matter with you? You know what I mean? Like, we travel all over the world. You complain about 20 minutes? It really annoys me. But obviously, I don't reply. I just go, ah! People are so lazy. You know, they really are. Then you've got other fans, the total extreme. You know, one night they'll be in Amsterdam and the next night they're in Ireland. You're like, weren't you in Amsterdam last night? Yeah.
Like flying from LA to come and see
I mean, that's stalking, you know.
Right.
In a beautiful way.
Yeah.
No, I've done that. I just this December I went up to Glasgow for a gig. So if you're into it, then yeah, that's a fun thing to do. But one thing that strikes me as well, and whenever these thoughts arise, I suppose, because it is hard work, is it what keeps the motivation or the drive kind of going?
Number one is the love that we have as a band. You know, we've been on the road together for 10 years, and you know, like we're best friends, and now it's even past that. You know, we're a total family, and if there's one thing I'm missing, it's the guys. You know, it's just having stupid conversations on the tour bus. And don't get us wrong, I mean, the first 5 years of Smoove and Turrell was really hedonistic. It was like, we really didn't give a toss what people thought. You know, like, it was, you know, we'd drink, you know, at 8 o'clock in the morning going to a gig, you know, like, there was no holds barred. And the one thing we have learned is you can't do that for the rest of your life, you know what I mean? So the last 5 years, it's been great. We've been very sort of well behaved, I would have said. Compared to where we were.
I think the most important thing as well was the album concept. You know, like, obviously I learned that years ago that making an album was like a really important thing. You couldn't just survive on singles, and people don't get you. But also, it's the space. Like, you get like 2 years. And people just forget who you are instantly, like really quick drop off. So you've got to have that writing process like on repeat. So just as you get to the end of an album, you've got it all finished, you go, get in, we've done it. And you're like, oh no, back to the void, you know?
Yeah, well, you're already thinking of the next concept though. And I think with us, we've always kept it interesting because the albums have always switched up to somewhere else. We've kept our soul roots, we've kept the funk roots, but at the same time, I never ever wanted to be a band that wore a suit on stage, danced like a band from the 60s. And we never wanted that for Smoove and Turrell. What we wanted was to have the space to, if we want to use synths, yeah, let's use synths. If we want to use a string section, yeah, let's use a string. There is no bounds. And it's great being signed to a record label like Jalapeno because they trust what we're going to do.
No band wants to be boxed, but unfortunately the industry always boxes people in order to sell it. It's the way the world is. But like, there's no reason, like, obviously what John's saying, why you can't use synths or you can't use rock guitar or whatever, as long as it sits in what you're doing. It's a bit like a painting. You can't just put every colour on, just because you can. Do you know what I mean? So it's got to be coherent and sort of make sense in your feel, in your concept, and also your fan base. You don't want to
alienate
put their nose out.
Yeah.
But I mean, we were worried about this album slightly. We're like, oh, how are they going to take this album? But we've made it. It's too late. We're just gonna have to hope. But at Christmas, we did a gig and we did 3 new songs as an experiment, and they went down so well. All of those thoughts were just gone. Instantly. So. And like, we've just put the new stuff out, and all of our fans are going, "Oh, I love it, I love it, I love it!" And so, it's great to have that.
We put up a new video yesterday on Facebook, and I think within 4 hours it had 8,000 hits, just for putting it up. Because people are desperate for content as well, and that's one good thing about where we're at in this horrible situation is that we've sort of had to diversify how we're approaching this release. Normally you'd leave it in the hands of the record label and you'd do a little bit social media to get the fans interested, where because we're not playing live and because we're not having that interaction with the fan base, we're having to do things in a totally different way. So like last Friday night we done the radio show live from in here, got very drunk, it was fantastic. And again, thousands of people have watched it.
20,000
views just from that one night. So that sort of advertising is priceless because people are desperate for something where they can go, yeah, did you see the Smoove and Turrell thing the other night? It was a good laugh. And
there's a kind of a thing of like, I mean, we've done some videos, we've been making videos as well. And it's that DIY sort of mentality. And you think to yourself, well, why didn't we do this before? Why didn't we interact like this way? Because that's what it's all about, is social media now. And so it's kind of, people are going to come out of this, if we ever do. Bands especially are going to learn from that process. So you've got to take the positive from it, like that you can engage your audience better by going live and doing things online, and not just, I mean, obviously the ultimate is a live gig, but not everyone can get your gig, as we already said.
Yeah. So you have to be creative in these ways just to figure out, to keep that connection with the fans going and then the listeners, but also do it in a way that
but also,
positive as well, positive and fun. That's the most important thing. Smoove and Turrell are renowned, especially when we're playing live, is a total positive dance band. And we're inclusive as well. We speak to people in the crowd. So doing this sort of stuff is it's exactly the same. It's just getting people.
The other thing is that I was really conscious of was overkill. Everyone was online doing DJ sets like every single hour. Your Facebook feed was full of it, and it's like, yeah, that's cool. I know why people are doing it. I'm not going to bite at it, but I feel like I want to do it when the time's right, and I don't want to just do too many, space them out. So when it does happen, it was a big thing. Yeah. So there's that element as well of not overkill.
And I think we're doing a listening party as well online, where we're just going to go through the new album and talk about each track and, let people listen to the album in its entirety with us, which is a nice thing to do as well, which we've never ever done on any album. So that should be great.
Yeah, it must be interesting to get that immediate feedback about what you say about the songs as well.
Well, it depends what they say.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Fair enough. No, but what you mentioned, well, that's I always felt that any feedback is good feedback, because even you can kind of tell where people are coming from. So you can just, you have to take it with a grain of salt, but just to have them engage with it is better than to not have them engage with it. I think. But what you mentioned about kind of having to immediately start thinking about the next record after finishing one. So after Mount Pleasant, what were the conversations like working towards this new album? Did you already have an idea in mind of kind of?
Yeah. Well, really, because it was like a sort of trilogy of albums. The first one was harking back to our granddads and how much they had fought to get us, like our mums and dads, to live the way they lived. The second album was my mums and dads and how they fought to get to where, you know, we live. And the third album was really us finding, well, me especially, dance music for the first time back in the 90s. It was just mind blown, you know, all that Chicago house, Detroit house, you know, like, and how we could use the tricks from that time in a Smoove and Turrell kind of way. So it was already planned, if you know what I mean. Okay. We already knew that we wanted to do a far more club ready album, but it's than the previous.
It's not only that, it's also the fact of like you need to switch up, like sort of 6 albums in, you've done a 7th, like it's like you know, you don't, I mean obviously not all our albums sound the same, but the formulas might be, but the soundscapes are different, whereas this album is definitely a very different soundscape.
And I think having influences as well from like other contemporaries as well. I mean, Crack and Smack, who are, you know, like our friends as well. I mean, I've worked with them quite a few times, and Smoove's done remixes and stuff like that. And we love the guys, you know, and we've always loved their sound. Okay. And we were just thinking how we could take bits of it and make it ours, you know. So it's just listening to that whole scene and then distilling it into a Smoove and Turrell sound.
Right. And well, with what you mentioned, how difficult is it then to kind of figure out what to put in and what not to put in? Because like you mentioned that you can kind of go on endlessly with.
I think it's like if a guitarist has an effect and he plays something to it, you instantly go, shit, that's great. That's it. That's all. That's all it comes down to. Okay. It's literally that. Yes or no.
And the most important thing I think is space. And Smoove, as a producer, is a genius at space. You know, you don't have to have a million things playing at once for a song to be good. Something Mike Porter, the keyboardist, should really learn.
The key thing I've found over the years is somebody can hear a song we've made and it sounds relatively simple what we've done, but actually when you peel back all the layers, it's really complex underneath, and that's like...
I think Do It off the new album is a prime example of something that sounds really simple, but when you start actually listening to the song and you realise how much is going on to make it sound that simple, you realise how difficult it is to produce the way he produces.
Well, that one in particular, there's a lot of layers into it. That's what I noticed about that song, I suppose, that there were a lot of things going on. So when you start a song like that, is it kind of based on trial and error, just seeing what works? And
yeah, I mean generally you'll get so far with a sketch and then it's like, well, that's interesting. Then it's when he hears it, he'll go, love that, I can write this to that. Then all of a sudden the song takes on a completely different dimension, and then you start adding or taking away more and more. So it's kind of like a 3-layered sort of process. John can change a song so much, and you've got to, like, as a producer, I've got to be open for that, not get like, oh, this is how I want it, you know what I mean? It's just it's open for whatever it is, right? Because we've got, like, we know that at the end we'll arrive at what we want. I mean, it's quite rare that we ever listen back on our stuff and go, oh, we could have done that better. It's just it is what it is. You got to just let it go, you know.
And having fantastic musicians like so close to it, it makes a huge difference. I mean, I can ring Neil Harlan, the bassist, up, who's like, he's a multi-instrumentalist, so he plays about 10 different, you know, instruments, and he can say to Neil, I don't like where this chorus is going, you know, like, can you find some other chords that, and he knows my voice, and he sort of, he understands the way I think, so Lloyd, the guitarist's exactly the same. I can ring Lloyd up and he'll just change and go somewhere else, and it can springboard the song into somewhere completely different.
It's given the musicians sort of like a free playing field, but it's got a fence round. So you say like, look, like when Neil was doing the bass for Do It, originally we just wrote it with Lloyd and he put a guide bass down. I quite liked it, but I knew I was going to get Neil to really do it. And I just said to Neil, look, that's just a guide, just kind of ignore it. Do whatever you want. And he says, well, I was thinking about doing some slapping bass. I went, try it. So instead of having slap strings, as in really metally, you know, like stereotypical slap, that's a bit like, he did this sort of muffled sort of slap. And he did 3 versions. He did like one that was relatively safe, then one that was a little bit safer, and then one that was totally over the top, like proper going for it, smacking all over. And I tried the relatively safe one first, and I went, I'll just try the busy one and see what it sounds like. And I put it in, and instantly I went, that's fucking it. It's staying in, and that's great because Neil, you know, because he did that at home. Actually, you know, sometimes we get together and we do it, and I was just over the moon because that was a great example of him letting him go, doing his own thing. And it actually worked better in the song. I think so that's the version that we used.
The thing with Neil Holland as well, though, he understands dance music. He's like
in the pocket.
because he plays with Above and Beyond. He's like he's spent the last 5-6 years in that world playing, you know, like all over the American coast, you know, like, so he understands, you know, like how to layer a track to get it to that sort of sound. So it's very easy to speak to Neil and say, right, what do you think we should do here? And he'll just go, yeah, give us, you know, a night.
He's
and then
massively open-minded. Like he's played with like Faithless and people like that. But he's also in the jazz world, you know, and he's in like orchestras. It's like, it's incredible what this guy's brought to the table. And he's a lovely kid. He's my roommate. We're on the road.
I'm very unlucky. I get Mike Porter.
Well, you mentioned Mike, and one thing that is mentioned in the bio is that he picked up some analog synths. So how did that those synthesizers kind of add to the sound of this album?
Basically collected them all his life. Most of them broke, actually.
Okay.
He has the actual keyboard that Blue Monday was written on.
Yeah.
It's not the actual one.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's got about
he's probably got 1,000 keyboards.
Different types. One's from Russia.
He's got 3 of the same keyboard. You know what I mean? It's like, why? Oh well, because like
none in case one breaks, or
no, he wants to get them all fixed. But you know how hard it is to get these things fixed these days. It'll cost him a fortune and have to remortgage his house. No, but he did bring loads of ideas to the table and new sounds, like, you know, new synthesizers, old things that were like we tried and tested, and then we thought, how are we going to do this live? So actually what we ended up doing with some of the old analog synths, because they're so problematic, is we literally ran them into his sampler, and he's got a keyboard sampler. So he plays those sounds so that they're kept as they should be. But that gives the freedom for the band live that we don't have to play to a backing track or a laptop. Mike's triggering the sample, the minimal samples live, you know, that's the great thing. So you still have that lovely sound because it's, I mean... Yeah,
there can be a nightmare. All sort of analog synths generally go out of tune.
You can't stay
constantly. You can't save the settings. You can't save the settings, and you can't. So you need, especially when you're doing as many gigs as us, or we were. We needed something that was a lot safer, and the best thing was to run these analog synths, record the actual sounds, and do it that way.
One of Mike's skills, that this is the first thing I discovered when I became friends with Mike many moons ago, like over 20 years ago, is you could play him a sound and he'll find that sound instantly. Okay. You know, like on a synth where you can like manipulate all the frequencies and you get that sound. It was like crazy because some people could spend days doing that.
Right.
Yeah.
And, but so in that sense, the one Never Wanted You More, that kind of had that vibe for me where the synths were quite nice. But beforehand, let me phrase that differently. How did that influence kind of the sound of this record? His synths, were there discussions? Were there, or is it just ideas that they're thrown in?
even if you hark back to Broken Toys, we've always used synths. It's just that they weren't necessarily at the forefront. So it's not that different. Like songs like Will You Be Mine, which was like a bit of an anthem in our live sets now. That would perfectly sit well on this album. It's got arpeggios and all sorts of things like that. So that's where we're coming from. It's just another element that we've just sort of amplified. You know what I mean? In this album.
And then you mentioned that the lyrics and kind of the vocals influence you a lot. So John, for you then, I can imagine that the music influences what you write about or how you sing certain songs. So how is that kind of relationship between the music and the words?
It is Smoove and Turrell in a way. It's like if you look at all the albums, lyrics have always been my priority in a way. Melodies come easy because I play with such fantastic musicians that, you can really get an idea for a melody in an instant. But it's the lyrics that I take time over because I don't want these things to be throwaway. We live now in a sort of era, which we always have. I mean, there's always been bubblegum pop. There's always been throwaway music. But that isn't Smoove and Turrell, and we never ever wanted to be. I want someone to listen to the first album and still get. And what's lovely is with lyrics is that people take them lyrics and they put them to their own heart, not necessarily what I was singing about. They have a different reason for loving that song. They have a different reason for loving that line.
John Skillers, he can leave the lyrics open-ended, so it's not necessarily like this is exactly what I'm singing about, and I like that. It's subjective,
And yeah, definitely. And that leaves it open for someone to fall in love with the song for a completely different reason.
Yeah.
I wrote a couple of kind of my ideas next to songs as well, so we might get to that. But I'll start with you, Smoove. So is there one song that lyrically sticks out on this album for you that when
definitely.
John kind of handled it?
It's the one the one that sticks out was the one that we wrote in a day, which was the one you just mentioned.
No, that's not. That's I Never Want to Do More is a different track. It's,
all right. Sorry, yeah. Talk about nothing.
Talk about nothing.
It's basically like I was working on a track and I'd tried loads of different ideas and I played loads of the bits to John. I says I wanted to do something kind of soundtracky, Massive Attack, like a heartbeat. I wanted like a heartbeat to the song. And it ended up kind of with that Sinead O'Connor vibe, which isn't a bad thing. But John came in and I went, "What do you think of this?" And he loved what we'd done, and we changed two of the chords around, and we were like, "Right, that's great." And instantly, he had one line in his phone, and that was it. He was off. And what was the opening line?
I can't remember now.
Anyway, it's about. Well, you tell him what it's about.
I mean, I've lost a lot of friends due to suicide and people that were so talented, people that were so lovely. And at the minute, at the present time, I mean, my daughters are turning into adults, and with that comes a lot of stress with the sexuality, with that, where do they fit in this world? I mean, one of my daughters, she doesn't want to be a girl. She's never ever wanted to be a girl. She's a Georgie, and she was really struggling at the time. And really, what I wanted to say in this song was that we don't necessarily have to talk about, like what it is that's getting to you,
and just
talking alone about nothing can be the elixir that can pull you around.
Right. What I wrote down for this song was being there for someone going through kind of the thing, and not being there by telling them how to think or how to feel, but just let them be, just being there with them.
Yeah.
Just be their friend.
Yeah, exactly. And well, because John, what you mentioned earlier, it's a very positive band. I mean, when you sound, it's very danceable. It's very upbeat. But then, like you said, that there has to be some substance to the song. So how do you balance those two worlds to make it?
It's a total tightrope.
I think when you make an album, you realise that you don't just write some songs and put them together. there's definitely a subconscious thing going all the time, because we've done so many as well, is that you need an upper, you need a downer, you need a weird one in the middle. It's like a story, you know what I mean?
Or a DJ set. I mean, Smoove's an amazing DJ. And, like one of the things I love about when me and Smoove go out DJing, it's like, he knows exactly when things need to be. Sometimes people have been going crazy and he's just dropped it to nothing. And I've went, what you done that for? And he's went, watch. And then from that nothingness, he's brought it up to like 5 times higher than when you thought that people were going crazy. And it's just those, I think it's not tricks. It's telling a story from start to finish. And people don't write albums very much anymore. And the ones that do are doing it amazing. Like Michael Kiwanuka, if you listen to the Monophonics last album, the people that are doing it superbly. And we want to be in that album writing category of bands. We don't want to be a singles band. We never have. People have asked us before, do you not just want to release an EP or release? And I'm like, no, I've never been interested in that. I love the album concept. It's so satisfying when someone gets a full body of work, and even more satisfying when somebody buys it and then 2 or 3 years later go, oh, I've always skipped over this song and I've just actually probably listened to it and it's amazing, and you go, yes, So yeah, like it's about structuring the album. So to answer your question, it's kind of like you always know we need a not a cheesy song like Do It. Is a great example. Do It, I said to John, that come off the back of a scratching, because I'm a scratch DJ. So I want to do this ping pong thing where you go do it and I go do it, like scratching. And sort of Jazzy Jeff and Fresh kind of. It was just throwaway. It was just really easy, light-hearted stuff, party stuff, And we did it, and then I think it was one of the last songs we finished in the album. But when we finished it, I went, "Wow, that's a single. That's great." And then we heard it on the radio, actually getting played on the radio, and it sits so well on the radio, and it was like really rewarding to sort of that it isn't, I mean, obviously it was thought about, but it wasn't like like slaved over like some of the other songs. Like Norman Cook once said it in an interview, you can spend like 4 years making a song, and then you can spend 20 minutes making a song, and it's the song you spend 20 minutes on that everyone likes. No one gives a shit about the other song. It's so true. Like, the more that you over milk a song and labour it, people will never understand though. Even if you sit them down and you showed them the layers in the song, oh, you got this, and then I did this and this and this and this. They just wouldn't get it. I think in a way, being a musician's kind of like it kind of takes that naivety away. And I miss that, I'd love to just hear a song. Death by 1,000 cuts. Yeah. I'd love to just hear a song for what it is and not know what a bass line is,
Well, that's an interesting thought, because especially from a producer standpoint, I would imagine, but for any musician, I guess, kind of knowing how it is made, does that devalue, in a sense, the enjoyment you can get out of it? Because I have that with I have a degree in journalism, or I studied journalism, and watching the news, I can kind of figure out why they do stuff, and it kind of devalues. Well, the media's not very good these days, anyway. But
it's really not.
Well, let's change the analogy. It's more like watching a movie, and you notice the cuts, you notice the edits. So I'm like that. And sometimes you're thinking, you say it to someone who's sitting and watching it with you. Did you notice that? And they're just like, "What are you talking about?" You're like, "Oh, sorry, just watch the film." but on the other side of things, it can make you completely fall in love with the band. So, like, if you listen to Quantic, or you listen to the thingy orchestra, cinematic orchestra, you realise how amazingly talented they are to get, to what they're doing. If you listen to the Daptone record label, like everything on there is done properly, and it can make you fall in love even more. It's not just that, it's also that thing of like, go back to what you said, like, say if you didn't know about all the layers and you were listening, you go, oh wow, that's amazing. But then you've got this extra edge if you're a producer or a musician and you understand those layers, that you can sit there like smugly going, oh, I know what that cello's doing, listen to that. And you can just follow the cello, whereas they can't do that, So You know, I mean, I
It
think
has its pluses and minuses.
I think I'd
Yeah,
like
fair
it
enough.
one day, but then I'd probably want to get rid of it.
Well, yeah, but I kind of get what you're saying with the other side as well, where if it's done well, you can appreciate it maybe even more because you kind of figure out how they did it and what it took to kind of accomplish what they did. But one other song I wanted to get into as well was, like I said, Elgin Towers, which that's one that was a bit of a mystery to me. I Googled some things, Elgin Center I found, and I found Split Crow Road, but kind of the word I wrote next to it was greed. So can you tell me kind of what that song, where that started and kind
Shouldn't tell him. Leave it as a mystery.
Yeah.
He's like, damn.
I wanted to take a day in my life, growing up in a really working class, really downbeat area in the Northeast, and make it beautiful, if you know what I mean. And the Elgin Towers, they were actually called the nursery flats, and they were bad for drugs, bad for drink, and the council eventually thought, yeah, we need to blow these things up. And it was like one of those days that the whole area got together and it become like a party, and like all to watch these flats be, you know, like blown up. And it was a lovely summer's day, and we met Jimmy Forsyth, who was now is recognised as a really famous photographer. But he wasn't at the time. He was just an old guy with a camera who documented the Northeast, you know, like from the early coal mining, you know, like right the way through to sort of mid-80s. And
Jimmy's got this thing where he's very sort of, he always observed, like, kind of fly on the wall of kids playing in the street and stuff. So he always captured that, not just a street, it would have humans interacting and like in that really working class environment. Like the most famous pictures of where there's kids have piled up loads of mattresses that they've found, and then jumping out of windows 6 stories up to land on the mattresses. Yeah, they're amazing pictures. So
yeah, I think during that time there was sort of Jimmy Forsyth, Tish Merther, who I think Tish was actually from Europe, who had came over to Baker just to have a look at how the wall was getting built, and the social commentary as well on them photos really intermingled with my story. And meeting Jimmy Forsyth and having my photo taken with him that day.
Interesting, John's cousin has got the photographs of the day, and when they met Jimmy and they took photographs with him and their day out, just going around the town and going to see the towers get knocked down. You know, it's like 24 photographs, but we've made it into a slideshow and put the song over it, like which we're going to release when the album comes out.
Okay,
so
that's going to
you'll be able to see for your eyes, you know what I mean?
Again, it's another one of them sort of homemade, you know, like make, mend and do. Well, you know, you've just got to get stuck in and make the videos. And
well, and this is again my opinion. Whenever those type of videos come out, they have a lot more heart than maybe those videos that are more thought of, overthought maybe at times. So I always like those kind of
super well.
Yeah, the kind of the natural. It doesn't have to be perfectly edited, and you know.
And it doesn't necessarily say. It doesn't necessarily reflect the lyrics. You could look at it and go, "What is this?" But it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? It's just it's an expression, isn't it?
Right. And with these, because well, you've talked about kind of where you grew up in previous songs, and it's kind of this is, I don't know how to formulate this properly, but it's gonna sound weird, but how much does the North mean to you in a way? The kind of the area and having grown up there and
it's pretty much everything.
I mean, for me personally, like I've always said that the Northeast, as we call it, like it's kind of on its own. You've got like Newcastle and Middlesbrough, Darlington, Sunderland, and that's pretty much it in a nutshell. Then you sort of like leave, if you go further north, there's kind of not much there. There's until you basically hit Scotland, you know what I mean?
Right.
You know, lots of farm fields and lots of like lovely green, and it's same going south. You go so far down and there isn't much there, then you hit Yorkshire Dales and all that. So it's kind of like the northeast is very unique because I think that's why we speak and no one can understand us and no one can do the accent as either, because it's so remote, even though there's a lot of people in one place. But what I hate about the northeast is obviously having to travel all the time. No, but is the animosity between football? I don't understand it. I don't understand it because
I love it.
You go on holiday. I hate football. You go on a holiday and you say to someone, "Where are you from?" Middlesbrough. Oh yeah, I'm from Newcastle. They're all friends in Spain having a drink at the bar. We're the Northeast champions. The minute you get back to where, oh, you're from fucking Middlesbrough. The Northeast should stick together because, you know, we've got the North-South divide, which is a huge thing. I don't know whether you have that in the Netherlands. I'm sure you probably do. Germany's got it as well, you know. Like they really don't like people from the south in the north, you know.
And I think in the Netherlands it's more because I grew up in almost on the German border, which is there's cities, but it's more rural. And then they look kind of down on the people living in the big cities, and the people in the big cities kind of look down on people living more rural. And it's not as harsh as that, but it's kind of like. Because I'm in between, so people from my hometown think people in Amsterdam are elitist, and people in Amsterdam think people are from my hometown are pretty much hillbilly. No, not hillbillies, but kind of far, that kind of.
Look down the nose. I know. Yeah, well, I think it's that, you know.
I think successive governments have missed the Northeast. So this is going back to the years of Thatcher, when all the coal mines closed with no other jobs for people to go to. The shipyards closed with no other jobs for people to go to.
So the Northeast has had to reinvent itself completely.
And it's took really till now to reinvent itself properly. And of course, we're going to hit another depression after all of this is. And I guarantee another successive government will forget about the Northeast again. And that's the good thing about the Northeast, that we do the best with what we've got, and that sort of way of looking at life has made we're very happy.
Our saviour has been the internet. It's literally changed the fact that you don't have to go to London to be a musician or to get a record deal. You know, you could do it all from wherever you are now. And that's the same with a lot of people. You know, whereas that used to be a real problem.
And then you mentioned this resiliency that exists up there. So, and now I might be mistaken, but I think isn't Sam Fender from Newcastle as well?
Yeah. Sam's from Newcastle, yeah.
Yeah, so and he writes some more politically engaged lyrics as well.
I think he got that off Smoove and Turrell. He came
fair enough.
Young.
I'm not. I don't want to talk about him. But what I mean is what role does music play, kind of in telling that story and telling? Because I heard it from Scottish musicians who lived in difficult parts of town. I've heard it from a lot of musicians up north. So.
Well, that's. I mean,
it harks back to folk, doesn't it?
Folk music. I mean, before I met Smoove, I was singing just with a guy and a guitar doing not folk songs. They were very soul, but with a huge slice of folk. And even now, the folk scene in the Northeast is incredible. Okay. You can go to, the Cumberland Arms, which is a great bar. They've constantly got folk music.
Well, not now you can't.
Well, you can't now. Not at the minute. There's just loads of folk musicians sitting in the houses just waiting for the day.
Practically.
Now, the folk scene is huge up here because people love stories. People love stories in the Northeast. They love that. And I suppose it reflects in my lyrics as well. I love telling stories through my lyrics. And that, again, harks back to this huge folk scene that we still have in the Northeast.
Okay. I didn't know about that. That's quite interesting. I'm going to look into that. So finally then, Stratus Blur, when did that title kind of pop into your head?
Amsterdam. It happened in Amsterdam.
Okay.
We had
one drunken night.
When when I was very young, I used to stay at my cousin's house, and we used to steal his dad's aftershave, you know, like so we could get into the pubs, you know, like look like real men, you know, like. And his dad always had the Stratos Blue Stratos.
Ah, okay.
And I had bought a couple of bottles of it for me best friend who now lives in Amsterdam, and so when I went, look what I've got you some blue Stratos, and the guys were going, get in. And then we started putting it on, and then we wouldn't allow people into bars unless they put it on. And everyone in Amsterdam was stinking of blue Stratos by the end of the night. It just had a cloud. Amsterdam had a cloud of blue Stratos in the air. And after that, I said, we'll call the album Stratos Bleu. And that was it.
But look, the artwork, like the adverts, like we're watching the adverts of like the aftershave adverts, and it was like, when men were men in the 70s, you know, and it's like really cool. So John's brother's done the artwork for it, and he's definitely took a note out of that, like, because there's like literally men from the 70s, wide fronts and everything,
mustaches, and
it's horrible, but it's cool.
Yeah, it's funny how those things kind of become cool again in a weird way.
We're gonna bring wide fronts back. Don't know why.
Well, let me finish on a somewhat different take on that question then, because you mentioned kind of liking to be in Netherlands, and you've been. I imagine you've been to Amsterdam quite a bit. What is your favorite memory from spending time or playing a gig over here?
Milkveg is always brilliant.
We did the festival at Groningen, which was incredible. Like really good. That was a few years ago now.
Eurosonic, I think.
I love Leiden. I spent a lot of time in Leiden with writing tunes with Crack and Smack, and it's a beautiful place. If I was going to choose to live in Holland, I'd probably live in Leiden because it's close enough to get into Amsterdam, and it's sort of a mini Amsterdam. It's great, you know. It's very beautiful.
I just love your country. I love the fact that everything's so relaxed and like almost half asleep. But everything is also very precise and like almost
it works.
Like
everything
mechanical.
Works.
You know, it's like, you know, it makes sense, and you know, you're almost leaders in the way of sort of recycling and sort of, you know, that green effort. You know, it's like you've proved that like it can be done if everyone chips in, and more so that the council actually, you know, do the right thing. You know,
and most importantly, the people are absolutely brilliant.
Yeah,
absolutely beautiful. You know, I've been to Holland maybe 150 times. I've never had one incident where someone was, you know, like I love the Netherlands.
That's good to hear.
Got some great record shops as well.
Oh yeah, great record shop.
Well, yeah, I've never gotten into. I see all those records behind you, but I've never really. I've just been born too late, I think, for that. So I never really got into getting.
There's always time.
There's always time.
Well, my brother's really into it, so I might get into it.
I've got all of these, right? and I'm still collecting, you know.
Okay, the last question then. What is the latest album you picked up?
Well, if I was to answer you honestly, it was the James Lestrange orchestra. Amazing, like incredible. I'll show you the sleeve. It's just here. Or is it? Because we had it.
Or is it?
Or
is it?
Dun, dun, dun. There it is. See, this one.
All right.
Really,
so I'm going to look that up today. I'm going to listen to that album today.
It's a little bit like cinematic orchestra. It's got that edge. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, gentlemen, I want to thank you a lot for your time. It's a pleasure.
It's been great.
Thanks for your time,
Thank you.